Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Emily. How are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Box of birds. Box of fluffy ducks. Doing pretty good, actually. Been surprising, actually, today. I've received numerous messages from people around the country going, are you okay down there in Dunedin? Have you floated away yet? And truthfully and honestly, it's a very strange situation we're in. I've gone to like a local Dunedin Facebook group to show people some imagery of what's going on down here just from
Apparently
people.
Chewy's been washed away.
Has Chewy been washed away?
Yeah.
So you can see, there's water. It's quite a lot of it. Some places like, I think more so out in the country, hit harder by perhaps in the urban areas. Well, there's an urban area, pretty good flooding and stuff. It's a very strange scenario because it doesn't feel like a storm to me. It's not heavy and blowy and, let's get out of the rain. It's just consistent light rain the whole time. And it's just the vast quantity of it has... there's a bit of a Photoshop on that one. The vast quantity of it has produced a massive amount of water. So yeah, I drove out to Port Chalmers today, which is, if you're looking at, if the Octagon was a clock, it was out on the coast at about 3 o'clock. Yeah, kind of 3, 4 o'clock, right out on the coast. Well, not quite on the coast, actually, halfway out to the coast, I should say. And that was midday today, and it was raining like it is right now. And there was water pouring off the hills, and it was a little bit going over the road, but like only, a small stream. But I imagine by tonight that could be vastly more because the rain has soaked up, so the earth is now sodden. And it's just quite strange. So I live in a part of town where I'm down like in a low part. I'm not at sea level, I'm above sea level, but I'm in a low part, and there are stormwater drains under the main road where I am. And the manhole covers have got little fountains coming out of them of water. So the stormwater is full to brim to overloading, but there's no flooding on the street. So it's quite bizarre. It's quite bizarre actually, because I'm getting messages from people like, are you safe? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But for some people, obviously it's really bad. But I was going to show you one thing.
Though. There's a lot of like disaster type things, and people are like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Good. I was going to show you guys something as well. This is called the Leith, and this river here. Honestly, you can like the bottom of this kind of gully is concrete, and you can normally see concrete on both sides. That's how little the kind of meandering stream is. And when there's water in the hills, this is what it turns into. But because, of course, it's Dunedin, when there's water in the hills and it turns the Leith into this, the Leith goes through the middle of the university. This is 2015, so it's not now, but you see the water pissing out everywhere. So when the Leith engorges like that, that's the university. They're going through the university. This is what the students do. So those steps are obviously normally not covered. They go kayaking.
Oh yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. So the warnings are out there to stay out of the rain and stay away. And guys and girls use the engorged river when it does that to go kayaking in.
Well, so I mean, it's free practice. Like if you're part of the extreme kayaking group at the uni, you get you don't have to go very far.
So that channel there that you're looking at right now, right? So normally there's, let's say that's 10 meters wide. It's probably actually, let's say it's 15 meters wide. Normally there is like 7 meters of concrete and like a 4 or 5 meter stream and then 7 meters of concrete. So that's normally what goes through there, and this is what it turns into, which is what it's supposed to do. It funnels all the water from the hills and it takes it out to the sea, but obviously that gives whitewater rapids in the middle of the university. And yeah, they love it. And apparently it's really dangerous, and only the best kayakers ever kind of give it a crack. But yeah, there you go, danger killer. Because look at that. That is
whitewater rafting. That's the word I was looking for. So
that's actually the university in the background, the university buildings. That is not a small rapid, right? And this is what these lunatics down here do for fun.
I don't know if I trust that water though. That's inner city water. That's probably quite sewagey, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking clean, green, whitewater rafting rivers,
that's
right?
What they do. You know, people jump off buildings with rubber bands attached to their ankles. You know, that doesn't always work out so well either. So anyway, Emily, hi, welcome back to the show. Lots of people in the chat are saying, "G'day, Emily, welcome back," because we've had you with us once before. Chewy has got a work thing on tonight. Although in saying that, I've been getting messages from Chewy saying, "Oh, so the independent report's out, is it?" From Casey Costello. So there's a little tiny part of me which wonders, is he going to pop up at some stage, because he's got no release. He's got no place to put all his anger and his frustration. So who knows? You might hear a little bloop at some stage, and there might be a small. The show
exists just for him to get out his ranting.
Thank you so much to our patrons. We are indebted, not literally because we haven't borrowed it from you, but we are indebted to you in the what thing that you guys do that help us get by. As you know, we are having a conversation about expansion. We found that out when I had COVID for the week and the whole thing shut down. We kind of went, actually, it was the first time, it sounds really arrogant, and I'm sorry about this, I've said this before, but it kind of felt like for the first time that we've actually got like a duty of care to stay with you guys, not just when Pat falls over. There has to be a reason to stick around and be here for you. And so we decided we'd expand, which is crazy. And so we're looking potentially at a Friday night show. And once that happens, we'll probably need some more lovely patrons to come on board. It's not today, it's not now. But if you want to be a part of what we do, if you want to help us out, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. You know, it depends what we end up doing. We might have to buy cameras, we might have to buy gear, we might have to set some people up. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But what we do right now couldn't happen without our patrons. And I know I said this earlier in this week, and I probably should have done it sooner, and I apologize, but there is going to be a meetup this week, and that will be Saturday morning. And that invite, so write it down in my notes, invite tonight, will go out after the show tonight. If you're free, Emily, you should come along as well. I'm sure some of our patrons would like to have a chat to you and find out more about you. So there you go. Yeah. If you're not a patron, I haven't even asked Emily if she's available, but if Emily comes along, you'll have to be a patron to get an invitation to come to our meetup. I
guess you'll just have to show up to find out.
I poked myself in the eye like 2 weeks ago. Don't know how I did it. I was doing something, and I kind of, my hand went past and I scraped my eye with my finger. And since then, my eyes have just been watering so chronic. It's actually that, and I'm very emotional that Chewy's not here. That's the other reason as well. It's a hard day. It's a hard day. Okay, team. Lots going on tonight. We have got conversations around Casey Costello again. Prime Minister saying that apparently these massive tax cuts that are helping out Phillip Morris aren't actually helping out Phillip Morris, whereas Casey Costello goes, oh yeah, they're helping out Phillip Morris. So there's some mixed messaging coming from the 9th floor. Going to have a little conversation, not about superannuation, not a big chat, because it's really based on a written news story and stuff. The regular things happen, which is National says superannuation age has to go up. Labor says superannuation age needs to stay where it is. And you know what? They're both right. Because it's not about what you do, it's about the stuff you do before it to give you that result. But we'll talk more about that when we actually talk about that. We're pretty lucky that our Prime Minister got himself what appears to be about $500,000 tax-free chunk of change in the last wee while. You know, good on him. Good on him. conflict of interest, the government that's shortened the Brightline test and also won't do CGT are now having people getting hundreds of thousands of dollars tax-free profit, which they wouldn't have got even if that Brightline had stayed in place. So, conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. And also this the family boost thing that's come out. This is what the government's put in place to, it's sort of the replacement for the 20 hours free childcare. A lot of criticism of it. People saying that one of the big problems with it is these families that may be struggling in the cost of living crisis have to pay for everything to do with childcare and then get reimbursed. So they have to have the money there to pay for it to start with, to get reimbursed. And of course, this government's going, we really would have liked to make the payment just automatic, but we just can't. Although the last government
we just can't.
Yeah. But the Labor-led government seemed to manage how to figure it out without people being out of pocket up front. But
I didn't have to do anything, and I got my COVID payment. I have so much to say on that. By the way, I've got a whole thing of calculations I had to do just so I could be, I could figure it out. Because I'm like, this might apply to me one day, and I need to understand it before I criticize them on it. So,
all right, let's have a look at it's Kieran in the Bush, the new high rating radio show, Kieran in the Bush. On breakfast this morning, and they're going to start with a conversation around, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to the conflict of interest conversation, because they are going to talk about, with no CGT, with a reduced Brightline test, our Prime Minister has just received hundreds of thousands of dollars tax-free. I think he received more in the last week or a bit than he gets in a salary, but for his salary he pays tax, but for the profit he made on the houses, that's just a freebie. That's basically a lotto win. Let's have a listen to what these two blokes had to say.
Cutbacks and savings versus the rich getting richer. The Prime Minister even said, I'm wealthy and I'm sorted. Does that?
That would be the most tone-deaf thing this Prime Minister has ever said, ever.
Yep. That seemed fair.
Well, does what seem fair? I mean, there are wealthy people in this country, and I want all New Zealanders to be wealthier than they are. That's the main reason I'm in politics, and the main reason I think all MPs go into politics, actually, is to make New Zealand a wealthier, more prosperous place. The question is whether or not a capital gains tax will do that, and the answer is no. A capital gains tax is a tax on savings and investment. That is what New Zealand needs more of. We need more savings, we need more investment, we want more capital flowing into the economy, and we want productive investment.
So that implies that this money that the Prime Minister has just made is going to flow into the economy. I suggest it's going to flow into a stock market portfolio or into a savings account. I don't suspect it's going to flow into the economy. So there's this red herring going up about more capital, thinking that your landlords, your property investors, your mom and pop landlords are going to get those earnings and drive them into another business. I don't think that's the case when it comes to this, which is why if you make $200,000 on a house, you should be treated very similarly to if you earn $200,000 from a business. I just think it's as simple as that. That's what I think, at least.
That is what a capital gains tax goes against, and so we are opposed to a capital gains tax. They're also extremely complex, by the way, which is why.
Also a red herring, Fano, because if it's so hard to put in place, how do all the other countries do it? We got told yesterday by these guys, look at what Australia is doing with this and this and this. They wouldn't talk about what Australia is doing with things like capital gains tax, though, would they? Because that's a less convenient conversation for them.
Every time governments have looked at introducing them in the past, they actually ultimately haven't done so in the end, because in the end you end up taxing KiwiSaver, potentially end up taxing family batches, jewellery, art, and small business.
Sorry, this is like the trio of red herrings. You can just stipulate in law what it's going to be. He's basically saying, well, it could be this and it could be that and it could be that, and legislation can just dictate exactly what it is. Art, family. I mean, I don't have a problem with CGT on family batches, second properties, third properties, but if you wanted to, you could say family homes and one more, and then every other one gets it done. So it's red herring again. He's almost going, if we did a capital gains tax, we'd have no control as to what we taxed. It's like, well, you write the legislation, so you have all the control.
Businesses. And so ultimately, the last thing New Zealand needs right now is another tax. We need to grow the economy, and you can't tax your way out of a recession.
Kieran, is the Prime Minister being treated unfairly?
No, of course he's not. I mean, he's rallied against the idea of a capital gains tax and then sells 2 of his 7 properties, makes almost $500,000 in profit and doesn't pay a cent in tax, whereas every single worker in this country pays tax on every cent they earn. It's quite clear that the taxation system in this country is unfair. And when you've got the PM rallying against something that would have made him pay tax on those sales, of course people are going to be asking questions. Of course they want to have a discussion about that, whether it's right and whether it's fair, and whether it is something that people are comfortable with when you have a Prime Minister who's declaring himself wealthy and sorted, making profits that are actually going to be higher than many people's KiwiSaver accounts when they retire.
Yep.
Yet they've all paid tax on that money.
Yep.
So I think it's a fair discussion.
It's actually a really fair question, Emily. It's like, should we pay tax on money we earn or make? If the answer is yes, capital gains tax is what should be. If the answer is no, then a whole bunch of us are paying a whole bunch of tax we shouldn't be paying. I mean, this has got a couple of minutes to go, but what do you think so far, Emily?
The argument of like you shouldn't be going after him, he's like we're going unfairly against Chris Luxon is really annoying because he's the Prime Minister, sure, so he gets a spotlight on him, but he is reflective of so many Kiwis out there who are flipping property and making hundreds of thousands in gains and not paying anything. And the other thing too is like I think someone said that he would only be paying 70,000 into the tax pool, which isn't that much. He still gets a buttload of money for that.
Yeah.
And it's 70,000, which is not that much. But if you duplicate that for 10, 20 people, that's a lot of money. It's almost $1 million that will be going back into, $1 million. That'll be going back into the economy, which is much better than it just floating between rich people who are flipping houses between each other.
Yeah, and the kind of red herring that Chris Bishop is doing, this kind of, your jewelry is going to be taxed next, like that when no one ever anywhere in this country, right? Yeah. And within legislation, like, oh my gosh, how can we set it to 50 kilometers per hour? They could drive any speed. Well, you write in the legislation 50 km/h. You write it in. So you write in, not the family home, or you write in the family home is clear plus one other. And then after that, so it's just, it's almost I think treating people like they're just freaking idiots. It's like I don't think people have the money literacy to be able to discern that too. So when they say they're coming after your KiwiSaver, people are going to go, "Oh no, my KiwiSaver," but you already get tax interest. Don't you get tax on the interest with the KiwiSaver as well? Yeah, earnings.
Yeah, so anything you earn in terms of interest on that, you're already getting taxed on it.
You got savings in the bank that earns interest. You pay tax on that. So there will be tax on this. Let's say 500,000. That's the number Kieran used. There could be tax on it if he puts it into the bank and that starts earning interest. But actually, that's sort of a secondary issue to what it is, because if I am a salaried worker and I pay PAYE and then I save some of that and that starts to accrue interest, that gets taxed as well. So you're still missing out that initial taxation of the thing you've earned or made on that thing.
And you make more money with the money that you've got too. Money makes money. So if you've got more in the bank, you just make more and more of it compared to what you can make with tiny $100 savings.
And remember, right, this Prime Minister was very keen when Labour was in to make the point that an appearance of a conflict of interest was basically as bad as a conflict of interest. Remember he said this?
Well, for the very reason that it actually leads to perceptions of bias, rightly or wrongly. I just say to you, that's the perception. Whether that's real or not doesn't really matter.
So if there's a perception of something, it doesn't actually matter if it's real or not, from the guys who cancelled the Brightline test, made it lower, which enabled him to sell this house and get tax-free hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is there a perception there of bias, a perception of a conflict of interest? I would say yes. And according to pre-election Christopher Luxon, that's as bad as if there actually is bias or a conflict of interest. So we'll keep going. If I can find my mouse. There it is.
There you go, Chris. What have you got to say? Labour's criticism is he's got skin in the game. He's just made $500,000 thanks to capital gains tax.
Well, look, I think it's really... we shouldn't be making tax policy on the basis of the Prime Minister's personal situation. That, like, let's be honest about it, that's not a very good way to make tax law. And this whole discussion is pretty facile because
but also it's not a good way to defend tax law by saying because this one individual, because as Emily has said, like this could be replicated hundreds, if not thousands of times across the country. He may be emblematic of a much bigger issue, even though we're talking about one person, who is also changing laws to enable him to then get that money tax-free, whereas under Labour, the Brightline was longer and he would not have got it. So yes, I think it is worth talking about him.
Of that, we should be making tax policy on the basis of what's best for the economy and what's best to get out of the recession that we are in right now.
Agreed.
And how do we create a more prosperous New Zealand? And we remain opposed to a capital gains tax. The Prime Minister has never hid the fact that he is wealthy. He has done well in life. He started off, living down in Christchurch and was the first in his family to go to university. He's become successful in business. He's now entered politics.
Sheesh, bit of a fanboy here, Mr. Bishop. You maybe want to just lower the volume on the bootlicking. Good grief.
Sounds like
everyone
JD
knows all
Barb.
that. So let's stop talking about whether or not the Prime Minister owns a property or not, he sold it and made a gain or not, and let's start talking about the real issues facing New Zealand, eh?
Well, if we want to talk about the real issues,
mate,
let's not try and paint this into something that it's not. No one's trying to develop tax policy, and we're not just talking about this or as a result of this discussion. No one's having this discussion out of the blue. This has been a long-ranging topic in this country, and it's come into the public sphere because the Prime Minister has sold 2 of his 7 properties and made $500,000 and hasn't paid tax. Now, it's entirely fair to have that discussion on the basis of that. MPs and ministers are required to declare their interests every single year so that people know whether or not there is any conflict of interest. And if someone is rallying against the idea of a capital gains tax, then makes profit without paying tax when everybody else pays tax, that is a fair yarn to have.
There you go. As Kieran always says, a fair yarn to have. Emily, I saw you pulling out your hair there. Would you like to take over, please?
It's this whole idea of it's not something that's of importance to New Zealand when flipping property is kind of the only way to actually get ahead in the country. But in order to invest in property, you kind of need to have money, which not a lot of people do. And it's just getting way and way harder to actually buy a house. I know, because I haven't been able to buy a house. But it just really annoys me. I don't know. I think this whole thing he's emblematic of a wider issue. A week ago, we had, the ANZ CEO saying probably should do it.
Yeah, about time.
So it's not exactly like it's come out of nowhere. And I also think it's a dumb thing for Christopher Luxon to do this while he's the Prime Minister, because it's just highlighting the problem. If he was it's not like he has to sell it right this minute, but he should have held on to it. It wouldn't have been an issue. It might have worked in his favour.
Yeah, we often think about the optics. I mean, you're a person who's obviously well versed in wrapping up a package with the bow, metaphorically speaking, with the marketing type design ideas, and the optics of what these guys do. Sometimes really unwise. I agree. Like if he had kept them for another 2 years or whatever it's going to be, and if they lose, which is odds are they won't, but if they did, and he goes back to being a citizen and he sells them then for more profit, because here's the flip side to it. I'm a wealthy guy. I'm taken care of means you don't actually need to sell it. Like you don't need to sell it. You just want to sell it.
Yeah. Do we know why that's probably his personal reasons, but do we know why he sold it? Like, was it a rental property? Was it just a batch?
One of them was the apartment he was living in Wellington, and he was moving into Premier House, so he sold it. So he didn't need it. But what I'm saying is, like if I was in a position like you, for example, and I wanted to get into another property, I could flip one and then get into another property. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need the money in his hand because he's doing something else. So just again, the optics around someone who's not quite, I don't want to say smart enough, but wise enough is probably better to go, this is not going to be a good look. You are writing Labour's adverts at the next election already. Like you're helping the situation. It's just it makes me feel like he is more naive than he should be at this level of politics. Yeah.
He's definitely not a politician. Someone like the Bish, that's nice. The Bish is a politician. He knows how to spin things. Nicola Willis, politician, knows how to spin things. They all know how to spin stuff. He doesn't know how to do it. His PR team are very good at writing him say this, don't go
Yeah.
off script. And it's so obvious when you hear it over and over and over again, he doesn't answer the question. And he's not good at spinning a narrative like most politicians are, which doesn't work in his favor. And it's kind of like the Trump thing, right? You look at Trump and he's saying cats and dogs stuff on TV, and then you see JD Vance, who's saying pretty much the same stuff, but he's a trained politician.
Yeah,
so it
he's
goes
a
over
slicker.
the heads of most people.
Yep.
And they go, oh, that sounds like a good, oh, yes, no, that does sound like a good idea. Whereas they might look at, someone else and go, not so much. But
that's where
he
you
just
need
hasn't
people,
learned the game yet.
This is where you need journalists and people like us to go. Even though the Bish sounds like he knows what he's talking about, just let's figure out what he's saying. They're not coming for your jewelry. They're not coming for your art. It sounds scary. He's done that well. That sounds scary. But this is it's not. We're talking about for houses, potentially your family home. That's how it happens around the world, potentially. But other places, invest, if you own more than 2 properties, if you own more than 3 properties, actually going after the people who are using this as an income. Because that's the other thing. If you are using this for an income, a property developer is using this for an income. Perhaps, like I've always sort of been of the opinion that before we had KiwiSaver, there were a lot of people in New Zealand who would buy a second house and that was their retirement scheme. Like they knew there wasn't much there other than the pension. They wanted something else. So they bought a house when they were 40 and rented it out for 20 years. It paid for it. And that was it. Like I feel more compassionate and empathy towards them because they were living in a system where there wasn't the backup that there is now. And so if they were going to do the CGT thing, I think they could do it starting from a particular date, meaning people, maybe people who have bought houses before KiwiSaver, whenever that date is, maybe they're excluded because they probably bought it so they could retire. And maybe there'd be ways around it. But the people who are buying and flipping or developing and selling, then that's their job. The person working at the dairy, his job or her job gets taxed. If you are a property developer, that's your job. That profit should be taxed. And I don't think that would be that hard to define in law. What a property developer is versus someone saving who's got a house for their retirement. I don't think it would be that hard.
But like Labour have said and other people have said, they're not coming after you, the mum and dads, which they like to use, like the mum and dad property investors. Which, to be fair, I think you could leave them out of it because I think they are, like my landlord, for example, is great. He's doing a genuine service.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fan of him, but he is providing a service. He's reasonable. He's a good guy, and like he only owns his home in the one we're living in. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of those, which is great. It's the ones who own more than 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the numbers are crazy. I think I looked it up just to check, but just an insane number of people, or a very small number of people, own an insane number of properties, and it's pretty crazy.
But I think it's as simple as that. If this is your job, right, then you pay tax on the money you earn at your job. There would be a way of defining that. There may be some grey area in between they'd have to figure out, but it wouldn't be that difficult. Anywho, a bunch of super chats came in that we didn't sign off on before we started, so we'll just get to them now. Dave just gave us an appreciation koha. Thanks, Dave. Kia ora, cuz. Mr. Arvid says, welcome back, Emily. Glad you're back. Kiwi Bird says, where is your beard, Emily?
You need to work on that.
No. Told you guys this a million times. Big Hairy is not about hair. It's about the audacious stories. But, Baba says, welcome back, beardless one. Campbell, dirty water rafting. Yeah, that was what we showed earlier. Thank you for your super chat. Kiwi Gold. Kia ora whānau. Late fee also, there's a rumour that Seymour, lack of humanity, blah, 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 blah. Campbell, thank you for your super chat. Luxon decided to sell his house after repealing everything exactly and ends up with a tax-free return. Coincidence? I think not, sir. Yeah, I agree. That's just strange, isn't it? When they blow up about other conflicts of interest. Arsehole says, Casey is blowing smoke up Luxon's ass. You could have done 3 R's instead of said ass, because then it would be from arsehole. Casey is blowing smoke up Luxon's ass. It would be thematically the same, but I don't know. Chewy does the comedy. That's why that was so bad. Kiwi Bird, thank you for your super chat. Luxon has made the strongest argument for a CGT. Yep, you're right.
It was a dumb move.
Because I care, 80% of rentals in New Zealand are owned by about 8% of the population. That's why NACT don't want a CGT, yeah, because that 8% obviously will be both funders and supporters of the right. Tawhiri, Luxon stated at one of the most expensive New Zealand schools, Luxon started at one of the most expensive New Zealand schools, and his dad was a sales executive for Johnson & Johnson, boosting Luxon's career at Unilever. He's a Nepo.
He's a Nepo baby.
Interesting. Brian Turner, Luxon will not be at the next election. You heard it here first. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think that, we'll see. I think he will, but we'll see. One investment property is good to build generational wealth for the whānau. No problem with that, says Luke. There you go. So we can figure it out.
That's the home, though. Your home is an investment property. And in theory, you would sell it and downsize, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it is strange being the parent of teenage kids, kind of going, what am I going to leave for them? It's something you think about. And having my dad pass away in the last kind of 18 months, 2 years. And it's I mean, I'm not about like massive hoarding of properties and literal land banking, but I do think about having a property, a second property. But then again, I'm completely for a capital gains tax as well. So I have no problems with that concept. So yeah, I have no problems with the concept of a capital gains tax on the family home myself either, because it's realized profits, which means you don't actually pay anything until you sell it. So capital gains tax can stop people from selling homes because they don't want to pay it. It can cause more people to hoard's the wrong word, but keep rather than sell if they have the option. But eventually they get sold. And so it's not like your $300,000 house on paper now is worth $600,000, so you've got a $300,000 taxable bill. It gets paid when you sell the house. So if you keep the house for 20 years.
That's what the ANC CEO was saying. She's saying that a wealth tax isn't going to work because how do you justify your house going up from 300, 600,000? It's the realized gains. It's capital gains is much better to tax. Yeah. Still think there should be a wealth tax, but I'm talking about the 0.1% who make far too much money or have too much, like just sitting in accounts, and they've played the system. Your mum and pop who are selling their house, I don't think the capital gains is fair.
What do you think about the idea? And there are many left-wing commentators in America who think and say this, like there should be no such thing as a billionaire. How do you sit on that? Like it should be almost illegal to be a billionaire. What do you think about that?
I think it's harrowing that there's people that are millionaires, to be fair. Jonathan and I, my partner, we've talked about this so many times of like, once you start earning over a certain threshold, you should start paying about 50% back, which I think you do at one point. I think he might have even said something like 90% of your money goes back, because there's a point where you're just earning far too much, and it's ridiculous. You don't need that much money, and like you say, money grows money. If you have that much to put in a savings account, if you've got $500,000 extra to put in a savings account, that's going to grow, or invest it. It's going to be able to grow faster than someone who's got $5,000 in a savings account. Savings account barely make anything on interest. Investing does, but you need a decent amount into that to actually make any money. But billionaires, I agree, shouldn't exist. $500 million, that's incomprehensible. Comprehensible.
There's always an interesting argument to be had with people when they're talking about, how much tax should people pay. And most countries, I don't have the numbers to hand, but I heard this conversation going on from an American. It might have even been, what's his name? Used to own the Dallas Mavericks. He's a billionaire. Mark Cuban. Might have been Mark Cuban. And they were talking about the most profitable time in America, which might have been the 1950s. The top tax rate was 90%. So when you say 50%, it's like actually, when countries and people were proportionally wealthier, like, 1970s, 1980s, a house was something like 6 times the average wage, and now it's like 20 times the average wage.
It was only like 4 times the average wage, I think.
Sure.
Or it was something like, it was 4 times your yearly salary or something like that. Yeah. Whereas now it's closer to 6 or 8 times. 10. It's ridiculous.
But so but in those eras, the top tax rate was a lot more than now. So the governments now who are saying less tax, more profits, less tax. We need to, to have less tax so people can go and invest that money and grow the economy. Actually, when we were better off, we paid more tax. The countries in Scandinavia who tax a lot more, they are some of the happiest and most wealthy countries overall. It's just it's not challengeable. It's not challengeable to go America is wealthier now per capita than they were in the 1950s when the top tax rate was 90%. It's mind numbing. And maybe like you said before about the financial literacy, people they'll listen to the talking point from the Republican or from the ACT party member or whatever, and then that's gospel truth, and they never look into it.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about like if you earn 100,000, 90. It's the same as what we have now. Once you start to earn over a threshold, that gets taxed differently, which some say it's a complex system. But I think it works well because if you start earning over 200,000, which is a lot of money to earn per year, 250,000 even, 300,000, like whatever's reasonable. After that, there should be a threshold which says, okay, 90% of that is now ours because, not even ours. It's going to the tax system because that's nothing. You earn $400,000 a year. 100,000 of that goes back into the system. You won't even know the difference between the 400 and the 100. But the difference between someone earning $1,000 a week and getting taxed a couple $100, or maybe whatever it is, that's going to hurt them a whole lot more than it will 400 to 500K. That's just a ridiculous amount. You don't need that much money.
It's interesting you would say 400,000 because in that same conversation that I'm struggling to remember who it was with, they talked about in the 1950s or 60s, whatever it was, when the top tax rate was at 90%, it was for something like over $130,000, which in today's money would be like 480,000. So it wouldn't kick in today until 480. So what you're saying, those numbers you're throwing around are kind of the same as to what it used to be in parts of the world, the Western world. All right. Here's something for you, mate. People want to ask you questions. Jono says, what are your thoughts on housing primary purpose? On housing's primary purpose is sheltering people rather than an investment vehicle. Also, go Emily. So what are our thoughts on housing?
You haven't noticed by the photo that's my partner.
Okay. Housing people as a primary purpose versus as an investment vehicle.
I think it should be, well, I mean, obviously everyone should be housed first. And then you can do whatever you want after that. But the issue is not everyone's getting a house first, which means we don't have enough houses. Well, we probably have enough houses around. We don't have enough available houses. We don't have enough free houses for people who can't afford housing to go around. So yes, house people first, and then you can do whatever you want with the rest of that. Like if you want to build a, I don't know, mansion in the hills or whatever, go for it. I don't care if you own that and then one in the city, but you have to house everyone first and make sure everyone has affordable housing, probably more so than anything. And then who cares? I don't care what you do with it after that. Capital gains it, whatever, but everyone needs to be housed first.
There you go. You guys can continue that conversation on when we finish later on. Hey, let's get to the story. And this is the one that Chewy's already texted me about going, oh, I wish I was there to talk about this because this story was obviously made mid-afternoon, 5 p.m. Casey Costello released the quote-unquote independent research that she's been talking about. And whilst it's not part of the story, they'd speak to the journalist afterwards and he throws down a bit of that information. Luxon today is also saying, yep, yesterday we showed you that video and it was like, well, actually, guys, Luxon did all this big talk about these tobacco products that have now been banned. And he's coming out today going, yep, no, I knew they were banned. Yep, no, I knew they were banned. Maybe not. Let's have a look at the latest update as the Casey Costello story continues.
Moves to help people quit smoking seem to be causing some confusion among our senior politicians. Associate Health Minister Casey Costello was blindsided this week when heated tobacco devices were banned. Christopher Luxon saying today he knew all along. There are also mixed messages about who stands to gain from the product's recent tax cut. Senior political reporter Benedict Collins has development.
Just think before the answer comes out, Whānau, if a company gets a tax break, does that benefit that company? Because that's one of the questions they put to Christopher Luxon. Company X gets a tax break. Does that help company X? You just ponder that for a while, and you wait and see what Christopher Luxon's got to say about that.
The Prime Minister feeling light on his feet today as confusion swirls around these tobacco gadgets. He insists he was aware the Phillip Morris devices were being pulled from the shelves this week.
I'm well aware that we were child-proofing alternatives to smoking.
Were you aware that was coming in on the very day you were talking about the benefits of the...
Yeah, because we extended it 6 months, yes.
His minister in charge of tobacco reform...
I'm just, I like playing poker and watching people's reactions. That was like a very quick answer, and he gave out quite specific information. I would surmise he's just been told it. Now, I could be wrong, but I think I'm all in once I see that bluff.
Though, was oblivious.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware that they had the products that were on the market were not going to be compliant with the 1st of October changes.
The government has just given heated tobacco products sold by multinational Phillip Morris a big tax break.
We want to lower smoking rates. We want to deliver on smoke-free 2025. We will do that. And the way that we do that is we make alternatives available.
Do you accept that tax cut on heated tobacco products benefited Phillip Morris?
No, I disagree.
We asked Casey Costello a similar...
Tax break for company X does not help company X. That's what the Prime Minister thinks.
He's struggling. He's struggling because we're getting rid of smokes. So,
I'm just trying to figure that out, how tax break for company X. If it doesn't help company X, who does it help? The tax break for company X. But, he's the Prime Minister. He probably knows more.
Question yesterday.
The policy around an excise tax reduction may have benefited them.
Oh.
The heated tobacco...
Oh. So may have benefited them. I think
you sure?
Well... So tax break for company X may have benefited for them from the minister. Tax break for company X did not benefit them from the Prime Minister. Maybe they need to get together. But mind you, remember, she's never got together with him, never ever, because he still hasn't seen the independent research. Maybe that's what it is. They just need to connect their calendars.
Products was the only tax benefit.
Officials told Casey Costello there's no independent evidence that heated tobacco products are any safer than cigarettes. And they warn that there's a risk that by cutting taxes, more people could take up heated tobacco and stop vaping, which is safer.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of evidence to suggest that heated tobacco products are that safe.
Well, the thing is, it's less harmful.
One News understands the minister's moves are based partly on this study, which suggests heated tobacco products may have helped accelerate the declining rates of ciggy sales.
And this research has been done by an independent body that's got no connections to the tobacco agency. He says, hoping very much. We'll find out, shall we?
In Japan. The report is based on limited data from tobacco company Phillip Morris and the Japanese tobacco industry.
They got me. Right. They got me. They got me. I thought it would be independent, but it was from the tobacco company themselves. Wilson.
We should be sceptical of claims made by tobacco companies, given their history.
So just get that, folks. That's in the same piece of research that was done by these guys in their own research. In the companies who sell tobacco, in their own research, it says, given the history of the cigarette industry, public health groups have a right to be skeptical about any industry product claims. That's in their own research. It says, look out for these guys.
Given their history.
Are you concerned that Minister is basing her decisions based on advice from Phillip Morris?
No.
The Prime Minister and Casey Costello appear to be at 6s and 7s.
And within the last hour, Casey...
Yeah, so this is the bit that they haven't got a bit for, but the journalist will explain what's been going on. So now we're going to hear about this independent research, the independent research that Casey Costello's been talking about all week. I wonder how independent that is.
Costello's office released the advice she's used, and you've been taking a look, Benedict.
That's right. Clearly not satisfied with her officials telling her that it was a bad idea to give these heated tobacco products a tax cut. Casey Costello has gone out and done her own research to try and justify the move. Now, just before 5 p.m, we got a big document dump from the Minister's office, and I've been poring over it. Now, my key initial takeaway would be that the experts believe that a lot more research, a lot more scientific vigour is required to look into these heated tobacco products, because they say just not enough is known about their safety. Now, to be fair, in one of the studies, it does say that heated tobacco products are safer than tobacco cigarettes. However, when we looked into who was behind that study, it turned out they were all employees of Phillip Morris from the tobacco company. And another study actually warned these heated tobacco products can actually be a gateway drug through to smoking cigarettes. So people who were never cigarette smokers might take up the habit because they'd been using these heated tobacco products. Now, given the science around this is so unclear, there's so much in dispute here, it is remarkable to see the government really pushing ahead with support for heated tobacco products.
It is really getting to kind of cartoon villain levels of lunacy, isn't it? There you go, Emily. So it's now revealed the independent research is done by people who are all employed by the tobacco industry. And in one of the other studies says that using these heated tobacco products might cause more people to smoke. Independent research.
Yeah,
Your thoughts?
might. They don't have enough research to say.
Yeah, true.
Which, I mean, they don't have enough research to say that vaping is not good for you, but we don't know, so it's better than smoking. We know that smoking kills, so vaping's the next best option. I'm sure there'll be research that comes out that says that's terrible for you as well.
Yeah. But
still a better option at this point. It seems a bit strange that it's almost like they National have a strange thing where if they don't have enough evidence, they'll scrap something. But in this case, it seems like they have evidence, but they're kind of doing it anyway. or they'll not wait for the evidence to come through and go, maybe we should keep that or lose it. That doesn't make any sense. Their position on evidence and advice seems a bit to and fro. Or they pick and choose.
We're going to see again, this government, on their tombstone would be, we ignored official advice. But we've seen that, we've jumped back and seen a few stories from the key government, and it's very similar. So it must be a National Party, character or characteristic that they like to ignore advice. Now, the only time we find out about them taking advice is when they want to use it as an excuse for space. So I'm pretty sure in the conversation we're going to look at tonight with Nicola Willis, talking about the family boost, she's talking about like if they want to give themselves an excuse for a bad decision. I'm pretty sure she said in that about, we really wanted to make these payments automatic, but official advice said we couldn't. So when they want an excuse around something, they'll sort of acknowledge it. But when it's something that doesn't fit in with the narrative of the legislation they want to drive through, they'll ignore it. And that seems to be the MO. Now, I'll be fair. I don't know if Labor does that the same way, but I don't remember it being the same as what it is now. It's like every single legislation has a regulatory impact statement or expert advice or industry experts saying, warning, warning, warning. And I don't remember the regularity of it with the last guys. Maybe they did it a bit, but nothing like to the level that these guys are doing it. It's just,
I think the issue is that it's very knee jerky. It's very like, oh, we're just doing this. And people are like, what are you doing? There is advice to say you shouldn't. And I think Labor have a tendency, well, I mean, this is the whole thing about the red tape, right? Bureaucracy, red tape, there's too much of it. Let's get rid of it. Let's start making decisions. Go, 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 go. But I think it's backfiring because people are speaking up and saying, why didn't you listen to advice? You should have taken your time on this. It's like the second they were in government, they started making these decisions and they haven't actually thought it through very well. Whereas, bureaucracy actually might be kind of good. Layers of red tape might be kind of good so that we get a good outcome. So it takes longer to do stuff right, or at least well thought out, well considered, like the boat, took 8 years for them to get the hospital, for example. They took so long to actually get the construction. Like I remember being like, there's tons of things happening. I'm not seeing a hospital. And then suddenly I went back to Dunedin and there's a hospital there. So it takes so long for that stuff. And then they suddenly build it, which may be like the last, 10% maybe of the whole project, the last 2 years of the project. But that takes time. National don't seem to have that same thing. They're just like, we decided to do it. There was some evidence, there was some advice. We ignored it. We took the stuff we liked and we just did it.
It's really smart, actually. I haven't thought about it like that before, but the anti-bureaucracy bullshit coming out of these guys on some level is advice causes sometimes the process to take longer and that process take longer, we're going to label bureaucracy, and we're going to get rid of it because bureaucracy is just the quicksand to an economy, is what they're saying. So that, it's really insightful. I like that. I remember that. I'm going to steal it and claim it as my own at some stage.
Go for it. You can have it. I'll give it to you.
Some super chats that have been coming in. Tiffany says, those who benefit the most from a system should pay the most tax to support it. You're being far too reasonable, Tiffany. That seems far too logical. Conrad McBad, thank you for the super chat. The independent research she released smacks of a C student cobbling together an assignment with ChatGPT an hour before the deadline. Campbell just says decisions. Thank you for your super chat. K Noodle. Higher house prices is killing Australia's economy. Great video by Punters Politics on YouTube. New Zealand has exactly the same scenario. Brian Termer says, absolutely bloody shambles. That was about the independent advice revelation at the end of that story. Frosty says, the Opportunities Party just released opinion pieces shouldn't be used as independent evidence. Come on, Casey. It's not that hard. Yep, very good. And I think last one for now from Kiwi Bird. National time. What time do you think we have? Cool Bananas. I'm going to throw out there a bit of a conversation piece now because we don't really have video to back this up, but there is a story that came out today that caught my eye. There was a bit of a Shangri-La moment this morning. Shangri-La, they thought that National and Labor had come to consensus on superannuation, but a few hours later, Stuff realised it wasn't the case. For a brief moment, it appeared the two major parties were about to achieve a kumbaya moment on superannuation. National's finance spokesperson, Nicola Willis, and Labor's finance spokesperson, Barbara Edmonds, were able to agree early on Thursday morning to have some quote-unquote discussions about the sustainability of New Zealand's current superannuation system. Talking about the viability of superannuation, talking about the viability of the superannuation system naturally leads to an obvious question. Does the eligibility age of 65 years need to increase? Willis thinks it does. But Edmonds, on the phone to Stuff early on Thursday afternoon, said that was not a discussion she was having. She said it only been a few hours since her and Willis spoke together at a business event on Thursday afternoon, but she was surprised about the superannuation questions. Now, the start of the show, when I said, actually, both of them are right. I'll tell you why. Both of them, both National and Labor, are correct by their own ideology. Which means they're not both right in my opinion, but National wants lower taxes, less bureaucracy, and for them to lower taxes means there's lower money in the coffers to pay people on a pension. Therefore, they got to pay fewer people. Therefore, the age has got to go up. Labor wants more taxes, more funds, more revenue in the coffers, which means they've got more money to pay people superannuation. Therefore, the 65 can stay as it is. So both of them are actually correct via their own ideology. What we've always said here, Emily, is the one thing that's for sure is you can't not do something, meaning you either have to raise the age and leave the system as it is right now, or you need to get more revenue for it and not touch it at all. But you can't, for example, leave it as right now and not increase revenue for the superannuation because our population is aging. So that's why I kind of said at the start, they're both right via their ideologies. Got any thoughts?
Well, I looked into it actually because I was quite curious to see, obviously I'm very far away from all this, so, But
Thanks.
I'm all for.
Cheers.
Sorry, I got a wee bit to go.
Yeah, I get into my wheelchair after the show and get myself up the stairs.
Yeah, sorry. It's maybe more of a concern for you than it is for me right this second. But so I yes, people are living longer. It would be scary if my grandfather, for example, passed away at 72. There's not a lot of time in retirement.
No.
You know, Nana died at 80. Still not a whole lot of time at retirement. But I mean, the population is obviously, you know, aging, living longer pretty much. So sure, maybe raise the age a little bit. But it's hard to know when to do that, because most of my living life, I've known that at 65 I'll retire. Is it going to be a big kick up if they raise it to 67? Like, am I the one that's getting affected by this? When does it, like, do you get affected by this? When does it come into effect?
Well, not me, because as we've just discussed, I'm basically 93 years old already, so it's not going to be me, Emily, as you've just said. So thank you for that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I remember
it's
a conversation
politicians as well,
happening
right?
on.
Because they're at the right age where if they said it wrong, they're also going to get affected by this, and they don't want to get. That's a bit of a conflict of interest.
Possibly, yeah. I remember a conversation that happened on the TVNZ 7 p.m. show. I don't think it was Holmes. It was one of those iterations of it. And the retirement commissioner was on with Winston Peters. Winston Peters has played this game very well to his own end, his whole political career. But the point that they made then is retirement age used to be 60, right? But that was also when life expectancy was about 73. Now retirement's 65, life expectancy is 80. So you've actually got more time on that than you used to have. Within 10, 15, 20 years, life expectancy will be 82, 83, 84. So raising it by 2 years doesn't change that. That was the argument being made. And if they ever did it, which I'm sure, no, I'm not sure they will, because, you know, if the left votes, the left wins. We know there's people. And if they put in a different government, it has to be addressed one way. There has to be more revenue for an aging population. Bigger percentage of the population is going to be over 65, you know, in 10 years from now than is right now. Or they need to raise it. And if they did raise it, they would just take 5 years, or who knows, maybe 10 years by going up a month a year or something like that to add 2 years onto it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not ambivalent to the issues here. Well, I'm more ambivalent to the idea about, for example, Māori dying so much sooner than the general population. And is that fair? If their average life expectancy right now is 73 and retirement's at 65, whereas a European is average at life expectancy is 80, they get 15 years. Statistically, Māori get 8. I'd be more interested in a conversation to see if we could figure out how to make that fair than worry too much about 65, 66, 67 for the general population. That would be what I'd be more into.
Yeah. And like people see in the chat, it's, you know, people who do physical labor throughout their life are also going to be disadvantaged by that too. They're going to have a lot more physical ailments at that age, probably even before that, probably in their late 50s. They'll be really strong, especially if their whole life. Like, if you're doing that kind of work in your 50s, your 40s and 50s, that's, I mean, I'm almost 30 and I'm struggling with my back and things. And I sit at a desk all day. Imagine doing building work for your entire life and then getting to 65 and going, I can't do anything, can't enjoy my retirement, my body's fucked. Cool, great, thanks. Oh, and I can't earn enough on a pension, couldn't save enough. So I guess I'm stuck and couldn't buy a house, can't afford to pay food. Now I'm in poverty.
You think about those people who like are lower earners in general, they're more physically demanding jobs often, you know, lifting, pulling, you know, whatever, factory floors.
Blue collar versus white collar work, right?
Yeah. And so their bodies wear out more quickly, yet they have the same finishing time, retirement time as everybody else. I don't know if you could physically do it. It would probably be too impossible, but, you know, why couldn't you tie into somebody's job to pay a proportionally amount? So let's say someone who is working on the roads, maybe they pay an extra percentage or two in there, but they get to retire at 60. Or I don't know. I mean, honestly, even to me, it sounds sort of an absolute minefield, because I do know, and it's different today from what life was like, you know, 50 years ago. Whereas 50 years ago, you got a job and you stayed in that job for your whole life. People apparently change careers like 7 times now. So that idea that I was just spitballing feels more problematic if you go from working at a call centre to working on the road to working as a nanny. How would you do it? I don't know. But it is.
It just seems like it would be a bit of a tax though, because you're basically taxing people throughout their life. So unless they're earning more, you're just taxing them more to retire earlier. Whereas if you've got people selling their houses, maybe their money could go back to them and then back into the pension system. We wouldn't have a problem.
There you go. There's the answer. And yes, Mark, you just watched me in real time figure out that was too complicated, but thanks for the heads up. All right, couple of super chats. Sam, thank you for the super chat. Apparently the National Party has never heard the adage measure twice, cut once. I think they measure once, cut twice, aren't they? I mean, the cuts that are happening at the moment, more like measure once, cut 10. I think that's probably more the National Party.
Cut everything that Labor achieved in the last 6 years. Great idea.
JK, people will live longer, but they can't work longer. I mean, they do say that thing like 60 is the new 50 and 50 is the new 40, and people are healthier and that kind of stuff. Now, like, I mean, it'd be interesting to know, I mean, any 65-year-olds out there, are you still working? Are you working by choice? Are you working by necessity? I can't, like, my mum was a touch typist. She was like a receptionist. Dad ran his own business and mum did some receptionist work. And when mum hit about 60, she went and got a job working in a doctor's office just because she wanted to. She wanted to, she could. Be interested to know if people out there are past retirement age. If you're past retirement age, though, guys, Emily is not going to be able to interact with you because doesn't work.
There's a line and I'm below it, so I just
I would suspect most people who are 65, if they're in a career, they would be keeping on working by choice. Maybe if you're in like a more menial job that you didn't really, like that stupid adage that if you find something you love, you'll never work another day in your life. If you're in that kind of job, you probably just keep on going. Whereas if you're, just spinning widgets to make sure they're clean for a living down at the factory, 65, you're probably out the door. So it probably depends.
And anyway. This kind of also goes into a narrative of the only work is paid work. The only work is paid work that is meaningful to the society is paid work. You're paying your taxes, goes into the system. There is so much more volunteer work you could do over the age of 60, 65 that is really important. Looking after the even older, your elderly, after retirement. You could help out in the nursing home. You could help with childcare, for example. You can help your kids or grandkids. Like there is more to life than paid work, and there are jobs that are, maybe they should be paid, probably they should be paid, but they are volunteer positions that cohort could be doing instead of working because they have to in, shops and retail and things like that. There's more important work to do after 65 than just working in an office.
I also think what you've just said is a really important thing for us to get a hold of, the value in other work that's done without pay to enable someone else to
parent?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I've got several friends who have gone through divorces who are women, and their ex-husband has tried to screw them down for every single cent because he's like, well, I've been the one going out working and I've earned all the money and I paid all the bills. And it's very simple. It's like the reason you were able to do that was that you guys chose together that your then wife would stay and look after the kids. So her staying and looking after the kids enabled you the freedom to go and work 60, 70 hours a week to earn all that money. And so without her doing that, technically with no, check at the end of the week, he couldn't have done that. And that's kind of what I think about when I think about free, not paid work, and how it still has a financially tangible benefit to community. So
that is such a big conversation. There's a lot of stuff on social media. There's a couple of guys that I watched that talk about the mental load as well.
Yep.
Sort of the females take on a lot of the mental duties. And also, if you are the stay-at-home parent, most often it's the woman, but stay-at-home parent, your job is 24/7 because your partner, when they come home after the 40-hour week, is going to maybe help out, but it might be that they're tired and things, and then they push it back onto the sole parent, the in-home parent, to keep doing the job, basically. So they may feel the one who's working, they come home and they still got a job to do. Whereas if you're the stay-at-home parent, your job is 24/7. You never get a break. And it's often, I've seen this in current relationships in my friend group and family, where that is still the case, that the stay-at-home parent is expected to do a lot of the childcare work. And yes, the working parent, it's tiring, obviously, going to work and things, but they're not pulling their weight. Who gets up in the middle of the night? The one that stays home, not the one who's working the next day, because that would disturb their work. And they are equally important, but the choice to have a child, which I would say these days is a choice, that is something that you have to understand, especially in those 1 to 5, 0 to 5. That is something that you've got to balance. It will be tricky. It's hard work, but that's what you signed up for.
Yep, 100%. And I think I've seen it as well. Lots of, especially female friends, having to not work with them, I'm not patronising them, but having to basically make sure they were clear that when you're speaking to a lawyer, the lawyer's going to say to you, you enabled him to go out and work. So you have done half the work for the house that you guys are now separating, because without your job, he didn't have a job. Your job looking after the kids. Or I've actually seen it the other way around as well. Funnily enough, when I saw it the other way around and she was out working, he was looking after the kids, they were really comfortable. It's like, it seems to be men in power or men in paid, that's their kind of identity, fought, my experience, they fought a lot more than women who are in the more paid position, and the dad was doing more with the kids. That seemed to go much more smoothly through a divorce. Maybe
I wonder if,
anecdotal.
I wonder if that's a bit of a biology as well. I think, mothers are maternal. That's kind of a biological thing as well. So they'll probably pick up a lot of the work when they come home to help out. Don't want to generalize, don't want to stereotype, but typically what I've seen is that men struggle with a lot of those maternal tasks, or even just the mental load, like I say, making sure you're not just helping the child, but you're also doing the groceries and the cleanup and all of this stuff that if you don't get it done, it just piles up and it's harder to get done. The other thing I was going to say as well is that if you are the stay-at-home parent and you're not working, you're also disadvantaged by things like KiwiSaver, because if you're not working, you're not putting into your KiwiSaver, and KiwiSavers, as far as I understand, are individual. So your partner is putting in money to their KiwiSaver, but if you split, does their half of the KiwiSaver come back to you?
Yeah.
Like, how is their asset split? So
yeah, it does. It does.
Oh, it does. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Good.
So
good.
Speaking from the experience of, people who, the older you get, Emily, the more people you know who are divorced, is that one of the things in a divorce settlement is they look at the person's KiwiSavers for that exact reason. So,
yeah.
All right, we're going to keep. I've got some starred ones up there. Have I done those? There we go. A few of these, then we'll keep going. Couldn't we re-implement the individual retirement savings scheme that Norman Kirk, Bill Rowling implemented? We could. I guess what they're trying to do at the moment is KiwiSaver. That's maybe a modern day version of it. It's in the ballot for $10. Thank you for the super chat. The levy system already applies for ACC, where increased risk to injury pay more levies. A similar approach to retirement could be looked at if it goes into a trust fund and not the consolidated fund. There you go. We get smart people. They figure it out for us. We don't need to say anything. Don't quite understand this. Te Pāti Māori state-funded flights, really? I might have missed something in that, but
I think there was someone in Te Pāti Māori that was taking a few flights that perhaps seemed as unnecessary.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to this last story, shall we? And this is actually kind of flows quite nicely off what we've just been talking about, because this is about the Family Boost program, and the payment started today. And the ministers have admitted that they're actually quite hard to access, which is exactly how you want to sell your new policy, that they're hard to access.
Thousands of parents of young tamariki are lining up for the government's newest childcare subsidy. National's Family Boost package kicked in this week, but the minister in charge conceding today it's hard to get. Business correspondent Katie Bradford has more.
Swapping the toy throwing and arguments of
K-A-T, cat.
Parliament for the relative peace of daycare.
You must show me your muscles. You can. Big, strong muscles.
The Prime Minister outselling his Family Boost package. It sees eligible parents receive between $25 and $75 a week. Families are welcoming the payment.
So it's a great acknowledgement and a little bit of relief. And it kind of just gets swallowed up in other areas with the cost of living crisis at the moment.
Daycare costs this mother of two $600 a week, so she applied as soon as...
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
600.
Oh, you should see the numbers I found.
$600 a week. So I know she's going to get it rebated back to her, but that means you have to earn $30,000 after tax just to pay for your childcare. Holy moly.
She could.
A lot of uploading invoices. I had collated around about 13 or 14 invoices to upload, so it took a fair chunk of time.
See, isn't it weird that National's okay making other people add more bureaucracy to their days and how they apply for things? They just don't want to see it in government. That's all.
It probably took me about an hour and a half.
Parents have to collate 3 months of invoices from their centre and then claim the money for a refund.
Look, our preference would have been to have this as an automatic refund. We were advised by officials that that wasn't possible with the...
So straight away, guys. Yeah. Our independent advice said we couldn't do it. The only time National cites or takes advice is when it gives them cover from a terrible policy or they want time. Terrible policy. So, what could we do? Yeah, I know the last guys had it all automated, but, you know, we lost that program on our computer and the experts came in, couldn't find it. So they advised us there's no ways to make the payment. So it's them. It's on them. It's not on us. And we always look to the official advice because that's who we are. I do like her name on the screen right now. Hey, it's Cola Willis.
It's Cola Willis.
Yeah, I might have a Pepsi.
Maybe that's her new nickname. Hello, Cola.
Cola.
Their current systems. So we had a choice of either delaying this for a number of years or delivering on it this year.
How fucking dramatic is that? You can either have the shit system now or nothing for 22 years. Oh, thank you, Cola. I'll just take the shit system now. Thank you very much. I mean, dramatic much?
Yeah.
If it was a
approach,
staged approach, that's one thing. But
say again, Emily?
If there was a staged approach, then sure, get something out now and then stage it for the next thing and promise us a little bit better in the future. But
yeah,
I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
On it this year.
I know how time poor you can be, especially when you've got young children.
Just a reminder, guys, don't know if you know this, Emily, I'm pretty sure Barb's got 8 children. So if anyone wants to know about children and childcare, this is the woman.
So the factors are having to ask the ECE for an invoice and then go through the process of applying for the entitlement. That doesn't make it easier for parents or for the ECEs.
Despite that admin
Otherwise known as bureaucracy, adding layers. Thanks, National.
involved, over 30,000 parents have so far registered for the family boost payment. More than 17,000 have been accepted so far, and money's due to start appearing in accounts early next week. Labor had pledged to extend its 20 hours free ECE policy to 2-year-olds.
Extending it to 2-year-olds is fantastic and a great incentive. It's also probably a little bit more funding just due to the fact that it's per child as well.
While these kids are clearly happy to play,
I'm not sure it's going to fit.
not every parent thinks the family package is the right fit for them. Katie Bradford, One News.
There you go. And now, Emily, I've already heard you doing this, and previously you've got some
are
fire.
you ready?
Yeah, go, mate. Go.
Okay,
I'll
so
sit
I
back
watched
and
that.
watch.
I watched that stand up, which I love that it's called a stand up.
Yeah.
And I was like, interesting. I just want to give them the benefit of the doubt. This seems like a great program. Probably would have preferred 20 hours for 2-year-olds, whatever. So I had to find the numbers. I spent a good 3 hours between MSD and IRD trying to figure out what, I guess I went from a one-child sole parent, so no help from the partner or anything like that, just trying to keep it simple. Could not, for the life of me, get the facts, because you've got MSD saying one thing, and then you've got IRD saying another thing, and it's very confusing. There's 2 systems. I don't know if you know this. I had to learn this. I'm imagining myself as someone in this position, so I had to try and figure it out as someone, and I don't know anything about this. There's 2 systems. You've got the MSD system, which is your beneficiary system, and then you've got the IRD system, which is your tax benefit stuff.
Yep.
So this is your tax back stuff for people that are working. I figured out the math based on what I could find. Essentially, I'm not good at math, but I put in the effort and I did it. Some of these numbers I think are before tax or after tax. It's honestly very confusing to figure it out online. So what I did is I went, this is my working, just a whole lot of stuff.
Show us your workings. Well done. There you go. Oh my gosh, lots of words.
I tried to get as factual as I could because I'm like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to figure this out. So if you are a sole parent on the benefit, you're allowed to work up to 7.5 hours in order to get under the threshold. There's also obligations. If you're on the benefit, you also have to be looking, this is a sole parent benefit. You still have to be looking for work and be ready to work when the child turns 3. That is an obligation, and you have to take up work if they give you work. That who's going to look after the kid? Don't know. Doesn't matter. This is not important, obviously. They would earn $805 a week. Seems reasonable. They can get like a child care subsidy. Even that was confusing as hell. I think it's like $6 an hour, up to $50 an hour. Honestly, that was confusing in itself. So I went $805 a week, fair. Minus $400 for your rent. I thought that was pretty average. If you're in Auckland, that's probably going to be a bit more. $150 for food. Could be probably less than that, but it seems reasonable. $75 a week for utilities. Somewhat reasonable. Depends on where you're at. $50 for transport. Reasonable. Sure. So you're left with $130 a week left over after all that.
And that's using your numbers. Like straight away, people are saying, "How about rent? My rent's $600."
Yeah, exactly.
So some
the
of
other
your
thing too
some of
is
your figures are quite generous to the government.
They
so,
are.
Yeah.
That is a generous, some generous numbers there. So let's just say that you can't work $160. You're 7.5 hours. You can't work that week. So that's $160 gone out of your pay.
So you're down
come
30.
out of that's you've got $30.
Yeah.
If not, nope, you're down $30. There you go. Medical bill comes up. Can't afford that. Your rent increases. Can't afford that. Power increases. To be fair, you do get the energy payment, but how much does that cover? Don't know. So that's if you're on a benefit. If you're a sole parent and you're working, this gets even trickier. 24 hours, maybe. That's 3 days a week. Seems reasonable. This is where it gets tricky because it depends, and I've heard from a lot of people, and this was a criticism early on, that a lot of ECE centres have a minimum number of hours or days that you have to do.
Yeah.
Some of the numbers that I saw, it was things like they have to be doing at least 3 days a week. And I think it was something like at least 7. So let's just assume 3 days a week, 8 hours. Then if you're working, you apply, you're eligible for the family tax credit, which at least they have a calculator on idea, which was good. In theory, if you're working, more work will equal more childcare costs because you get 20 hours free and that's it. You start paying after that, and it's bloody expensive. So you're kind of capped at about 24 hours a week, or 20 hours a week, ideally, in order to not sort of have that all screwed up. $996 a week you would be earning. Again, $400 rent, $150 food, $75 utility, $50 transport. You're left with $321. In order for you to work 24 hours a week, and you're capped at 20, that's 6 hours of childcare that you have to come up with. Some of the numbers I saw was $340 a day.
Wow.
In childcare.
Wow.
So you have to find, after your 20 hours a week that you get free, $191 a week for that child to be in childcare while you work. You are no better off. You end up with $130 after that. And the more you work, you don't get any more ECE. You just have to pay for that out of pocket. So that tax rebate, as I had to figure out myself, it's 25% of what is after that 20. It's a maximum of 25%, or it's a maximum of $75 a week.
So your conclusion would be what after doing all those numbers? You would have not, someone was to come up to you and say, the elevator pitch, we're riding the elevator down, give it to me in 30 seconds. What have you learned?
It doesn't matter whether or not you're a benefit or you're working for 24 hours a week. If you're a solo mum, this does not help you whatsoever. And the other thing too is you have to foot the bill for $191 first.
Yeah.
And then after 3 months, then you get your rebate. That's if you've done your paperwork correctly, if you've got it in on time, if you've got the right invoices. Like I remember the person you had on about the disability, all of that stuff that they've got through. It'll be the same thing of like, didn't get it on time, this doesn't count anymore, we've changed something.
Out of date.
It's just ridiculous. But that took me hours to figure out. If I was actually someone trying to get this information for myself, I was pulling my hair out, but I would be confused and upset. And honestly, I would have given up and been like, can't happen. I can't do it. I can't make it work. But that is the reality of some people.
Good investigative journalism, Emily. Appreciate that.
I
well done.
tried, and I would take everything I just said with a grain of salt. But if I'm a layman person, like anyone out there, I probably have a little bit more skill and a bit more knowledge in this department. But someone who doesn't understand this stuff would struggle to understand that and get the right answers. And it's not clear.
We are going to wrap up, but very quickly, I made that comment about what is this all about. Kiwi Skirt has put in a super chat. Kiwi Skirt, you should just message me. You don't have to pay for your things. Jeez. Chat, you want to discuss this. Pat, please don't ignore it. And so I've brought it up. It says this. I should turn that off. This MP spent $39,000 on flights, but Te Pāti Māori won't say why. I'm not subscribed, so I'll just get the first couple of sentences. Te Pāti Māori co-leader Debbie Ngaruapeka spent more than $39,000 on flights over 3 months, but is refusing to say why. MPs doing their quarterly releases. That's a really interesting story, which we will follow up on, because I just did the numbers. I got inspired by Emily, and I thought I'd do some maths while she was telling us about her maths. It's like $430 a day on flights. That's what it averages
But I
out
thought
to be.
Luxon used to be the CEO of Air New Zealand. Could he not subsidise it and help out his mates?
Maybe.
Or is that just not how it works?
I think the story is, and Andrea Vance is a good journalist, and she's a bit like Jack Tame. She will call a spade no matter who it is. The story is, why aren't we being told what the 39K is? And we love the Māori Party, and we love Deb. She's been on numerous times, but it's a story we'll chase. And last show for the week is tonight, but maybe we will hear more about that and do more on that next week. Okay, team. Hey, thanks for coming on board tonight, Emily. It's
thanks for having me.
It's a breath of fresh air. Is that what they say?
Is it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. So thanks so much for being a part of what we do. Really appreciate you. Whānau loves you, obviously. I'm going there now and saying, there's a lot. People are saying hello and thanks and goodbye. That's not a mate. I'm looking at them. Paul Māori, eh? Thanks, Emily, from Very Short. Very Short. Thanks, Emily. So it's been very cool. Thanks for being a part of what we do. Let's get to the outro.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Well, that's it for me, and I'm sorry to all those Nala fans out there. Yes, I forgot she was with me in the room, but there's a little bit of her right there. Anything to wrap up with, Emily? Any thoughts of the day?
No, my brain hurts from doing all those numbers, but it was worth doing because now I know a little bit more and I can argue the point, which is great. But no, it's been fun, and I hope you have a good weekend, everyone. Well, I mean, Friday and good weekend. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks for being a part of what we did tonight. We'll see you all, team, Monday night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Bomber's got a big debate on next week that's been publicised quite a lot. Bomber's going to join us on Monday night to talk to us about it. And other than that, just have a safe weekend. If you're a patron, we'll hopefully see you Saturday morning. The invite's going out tonight. I'm just saying that again to myself to remind myself to get it out tonight. And otherwise, we'll just see you Monday from 9 p.m. for another edition. Thanks, team. Hooroo.